This is the Vision with Execution podcast. My name is Adam Torkelson. I'm the self-proclaimed host. This is my 14th or 15th episode. I'm not super duper keeping track. I just know this year I want to record 50, that's 50 episodes. And today my guest on the show is Cort Brady. He has a really somewhat similar background to me in that he's founded companies and operates them. And I would say, based on LinkedIn and the few conversations we've had together at some networking events, he's really good at building teams, not only for his own companies, but his current company, Covalent, where he's the CEO and founder. They help founders, other founders, build teams with a lot less turbulence and a lot faster. So, Cort, hopefully I didn't slaughter that too much, but thank you for coming on my show either way.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Where are you calling in from right now?
I'm in Draper, Utah. I think
Boom.
pretty close to you.
Yeah, so I'm in American Fork, which means we're about a 20-minute drive away from each other.
Yep.
And you have your own podcast called Elevate Utah, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's on, I assume it's on Spotify and all the things.
It is.
People should go check it out, no doubt.
Yeah, we love doing it.
And one day I will probably be a guest on your podcast as well, if
Love
you'll
that.
have me. Good. So the guests I have on my show, they're typically men, although that's not a hard and fast rule. I've had one woman so far, but it seems like the men that I know and the ones that I hang out with are pretty decent at creating visions and then executing on them, turning them into realities. And that's the premise of each of my episodes is I ask everybody two questions. And the first one is always, what is your vision for 2025? You don't have to answer that immediately. And then the second question is, well, since you've got this great vision, and I know you've got a pretty good imagination, how are you going to execute that vision into a reality in 2025? So, Cort, before we get into any of that, I would love to know some of your background. Like, let's pretend we're getting to know each other for the first time, which essentially we are. And how do you typically introduce yourself and start connecting with somebody on the first meeting?
Well, it depends. Are you a guy or a girl, and am I married or single?
Well, I hope I'm a guy, and I've been married 20 years. I have two kids, 18-year-old boy, 14-year-old girl. They are all very active in sports. I coach my daughter's basketball team, and I'm super duper religious. So there you go.
Awesome. Me in 30 seconds. I have an amazing wife, a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 1-year-old. And she's pregnant with another little boy coming in July.
Nice.
I love working, and the only dispute we ever have in our marriage is that I want to be working more than I am, and she's kind of let me work as much as I do.
How'd you guys meet?
We met in Rexburg, Idaho, at school, BYU, Idaho.
And what did you go to school for?
Went to school for finance, was there for 6 years, and did not get my degree. Have about 20 credits left. I did door-to-door sales while I was there, so sold for 5 of the 6 years, and then had a business opportunity in Salt Lake come up and left Rexburg to pursue this opportunity. That company, so I started in 2017 and turned into Aspen. We grew to about 80 employees and worked with 4 or 5, it still exists, works with 400 or 500 banks, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, John Deere Financial. So that's why we came here.
That's pretty sweet. So if LinkedIn is any indicator, it looks like you took a board position at Aspen, and then went and started up Covalent. The timing, I'm sure, is not exactly one right after the other, but it sounds like you're a guy who, like me, loves to put their brain to work on doing something that's fulfilling and provides for your family and hopefully helps a lot of other people along the way, whether it's financially or whatnot. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, good. And you, by the way, you have a really nice smile. So,
Appreciate
and I don't say that in any sort of weird way. It's like the manliest sort of way possible. You have an awesome smile. And I'll bet you honed that really well doing door-to-door sales.
it. It was helpful doing door-to-door sales.
I remember those days. I did 3 months with selling soft water treatment to my neighbors here in Utah. I'm never going to do that again. But I really wanted my son to do door-to-door sales, and he was all for it. It just turns out he figured out he wants to be an electrician when he graduates and then comes back from his mission. So door-to-door sales, that's not really a skill you need as an electrician. But like I really think that all these soft skills like sales, for instance, that's a skill that can be learned and developed, and anybody can learn it. And correct me if I'm wrong. You're the expert here. I by no means know what I'm talking about, but that's just kind of what I've observed.
Yeah, sales has been a very valuable skill. Interestingly enough, when we started the company, I was not a salesperson, so I found a partner who had been in the space and had done sales in the space, and he did all the sales for the first 5 years, and I did everything else. The thing that from sales that helped me even more was the negotiation ability. The people don't know how to negotiate, and so much money can be made if you can figure out how to understand the other person and get what they're wanting, figure out what they want, and be able to deliver that to them, and also see how that aligns with what you want. Oftentimes people don't want the same thing, which makes relationships beautiful things because we want things from each other that are easy for us to give and are worth a lot when we receive them, and not worth too much when we give them away.
That's interesting. You call it negotiation, and I've thought like what you described as negotiation is not what I was imagining in my head that you were about to talk about, which that's kind of cool because I always love to break my own preconceived notions about things. And I never believe I'm fully right about anything, especially after being married for 20 years to the same woman. I know that I'm not right about a lot of stuff.
Last
But
week I asked my wife which towel was mine. We have a little hanging rack and there's two towels on there. And she looked at me and she said, "Mine's on the right." Like you already know this. I'm right. I'm on the right side. Yeah, that's how we distinguish which towel whose is whose.
that's a very apt analogy. I like that. But when it comes to negotiation, I based on your description, I'm negotiating constantly because I'm just trying to think what does the other person actually want? And can I give it to them in a way that actually serves me too? I'm constantly thinking about that because that actually makes it easier for everybody involved if you're just trying to find ways to give people what they actually want that you can actually deliver and not just say you can deliver, because there's a huge gap, I think, between what people say they can do and deliver and what they can realistically do and deliver. And I'm trying to be as realistic as possible whenever I'm talking to somebody and just saying, here's exactly what I know I can do and what do you actually need? And let's see if we can meet in the middle. And I just made that up on the spot for you. But I don't know if that sounds like a negotiation, yay or nay.
Yeah, that sounds like effective negotiation.
Ooh, nice, nice.
Other types of negotiations that are far less effective. One of my favorite quotes is the most important negotiation is the next one. And people can seemingly win a negotiation and get that upper hand, but if it kills the chance to have a future negotiation with that person, you really lost long term, even if you think that you won it.
That's awesome. I'm pretty sure I've heard that before, but I never heard it in context. So that's awesome. And I've always kind of thought of negotiation almost as this negative thing to be avoided. If I go into a situation thinking to myself, okay, I'm going to negotiate with this guy, then I always start to feel like my needs are more important than theirs. So uh, I actually don't think about negotiation, the phrase, because it's got a negative connotation to me, just because of all the years that I've been thinking, yeah, I don't want to negotiate with somebody because that feels like a power struggle. But the way you described it makes it sound like it's the way we should be doing business with each other.
It's just one of the 7 habits, right?
Yeah.
Seek first to understand and then be understood.
Yeah.
That comes up negotiation for me.
Totally.
So after door-to-door sales started Aspen, and along that path, we launched another company. One of the employees and me and my partner launched it. And then 2 years after that, my partner left Aspen to go work at that company, and that employee and that partner bought me out of that company, and I bought my other partner out of Aspen. And then also along that route, we started a software as a service business, took some technology that we built in-house and decided to license it directly to the banks instead of just being a tech-enabled service business, which I think is probably a playbook for a lot of businesses that start off service, build technology, and then become a tech company. And raised $500,000, built a team of 7 developers, and 3 months later, let the 7 developers go. Gave the $500,000 back to the developers, took a bath on, let my wife know we had just lost 6 figures from our personal balance sheet, and realized that not everything I touched was gold. Maybe was the realization. And after that, the next year and about year and a half, as I exited out of the company to start that software company, I'd put the team in place, and that was about 2 years ago. Put the team in place to run Aspen. That was a company started in 2017. And when we closed down that company, I just found myself with this huge void. I didn't know what are next steps look like. I'm sure anyone that's been on the entrepreneurial path, there's peaks and valleys, and when you're in the valley looking at all of the peaks around you and wondering which mountain do I want to climb next, for me it's a very painful place to be. So that's when I started my podcast. That's when I did a YouTube channel. I started doing free executive coaching, trying to figure out how to add some value and get some purpose. And around that time is when Covalent emerged. One of the things I was doing was coaching executives, and we started building out a performance alignment software. And so for the last year, I worked with 5 different founders and helped them go through a similar process of helping them build up a team of great people and put a software solution in place that aligns people so that they know how they're performing every day. And 4 of those 5 case studies were successful. So that's now what I'm doing full time, trying to scale that process.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. I love that story. And I like that you're willing to talk about the struggle of being an entrepreneur. And I don't think it does anybody a service to only talk about the positive peaks of running a business, starting a business. So I love the phrase "take a bath" when it comes to describing losing money. So much easier way to phrase it. I've taken a bath in six-figure range over my life. And
You've played big.
yeah, and my favorite fail story of myself was I bought a hair salon right here in American Fork, less than 2 miles from my house. And I looked at their financials. It's really healthy. There's a really good margin that I felt like could pay me a decent salary and pay me back on how much I was going to spend to buy it. I didn't have to get a loan or anything. But turns out, since I had no idea what I was doing when it comes to hairstyling or cutting hair at all, that was my first mistake. I had no idea how a business like that actually operates. So I stepped in, tried to learn some of the things from the exiting founder, and I felt like I was starting to pick things up. And turns out she had included her own salary as part of the monthly profit instead of putting it as an expense. And that's another thing I learned as part of that process, understanding what the financials are actually saying. So less than 8 months later, I sold that for $1 to one of the other stylists. And my wife, and this was the beginning of my understanding of why wives are so awesome. My wife told me initially I should not do that. Before I ever did it, she's like, I don't think you should do that. And I did it anyway. And now I actually talk to my wife about every business decision I'm going to be making. And most of the time, she has no clue what the actual potential is of any of these business deals. If I can describe it to my wife and she gets a good feeling about it, then I know at least the idea has merit. So I kind of use her as a sounding board for just all kinds of stuff. And that's been a huge blessing for me. Now, unless you want to say something awesome about your wife.
Wife's incredible. I agree fully that her intuition, at least it's worked the same for me. When there's someone, she said, hey, I don't think we should recruit that person, but I really wanted to recruit them, or we shouldn't do this business venture, and I really wanted to do it. Anytime I've gone against that intuition, it's generally ended more painful and avoidable. So yeah, I think you're spot on.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. Intuition is the exact right word. So let me ask you the two big podcast questions I ask everybody really quick. What is your vision for 2025, Cort?
Yeah, I want to free 12 founders. I feel like we start companies with purposes. We start companies so that we can have more time with our family, or more time to create, or because we have a product that we want to bring to fruition. And then we often spend our time managing people and people issues. So you have technicians and creators that are turned full-time managers instead of building. So my goal is to work with 12 additional founders this year and help them be free to X, is what I call it, free to do what X is, fill in the blank, whatever they started their business for. And as part of that, we'll have a software company that is an add-on to that. So I want to hit 100,000 in ARR with that software company, which means we'll have between 500 and 700 users on the platform. Do you want it in more than a business perspective? I could tell you what my vision is in all aspects of life, or just tell you what my financial goals are.
Well, I firmly believe that all the things that we care about physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally, they have to work together if we want to achieve any of our visions. So any personal visions that you've got for yourself that you're going after, this is the platform to talk about those for sure.
Cool. I want to have, so I'll keep going on the financial side and I'll hit a couple others. I want to have 10 additional rental properties. I hadn't bought any ever until last year. I made a bet with a buddy we went to a retreat and I was the only one there. I thought I was the only one there that didn't have a rental property because it was a real estate retreat. And we found ourselves sitting next to each other talking, and he asked me how many properties I had, and I said 0. And he's like, "You're kidding. I thought I was the only person. I don't have any either." And this was in October of last year. And I said, "Bro, we gotta pull the trigger on something." And so he said, "Okay, let's do it." I said, "Okay, well, we gotta commit." So I promise you that I will either put $50,000, because I had the money set aside, I'll put $50,000 into real estate, or I will donate $50,000 to the Kamala Harris Foundation. And he looked at me and said, "Well, that would probably do a lot of good for the world." And I said, "Well, what foundation do you not want to donate to?" He said, "Well, I'll bet you 50,000 that I'll put 50,000 to real estate, or I'll donate to the Donald Trump Foundation." And I said, "Okay." So the clock was ticking, and then we announced it to the other 40 people in this retreat, and some were good friends and buddies, and got everything dialed, and then some stuff fell through. Kept waiting, and on December 31st of last year, pulled the trigger and closed. Everything was documented, signed, title happened, and got it all pushed in my name. So I had a buzzer beater. So that was the first rental property. Want to have 10 more by the end of this year. And then some passive income coming from other investments. And I've built equity over and over and over. And this year is the first year that I want to cash flow $1 million is the financial goal. On the relationship side, my wife, my kids, and what I would call my tier 1 friends, those people that we'd be willing to get very uncomfortable or very inconvenienced by if they needed help. And they would do the same for us, to travel somewhere, take their kids for a month at a time, whatever it was. Those people in our lives, hope to build those relationships.
Just curious.
Yeah.
I've never heard that phrase before, tier 1 friendships, but you said that there's people that you'd be willing to get really uncomfortable for if they asked you for something.
Sure.
Where did you get that idea from?
I don't know. We're born with our family, and then we choose our friends, and some friends become family. I don't know.
So that's not something that you read in a book or anything. It's just.
No, I do like to read a lot, but that is not something I read in a book.
Because I like that. I bet you could write a book just about that. That's a fascinating topic. I think about relationships all the time. Yeah. I'm a recovering addict, and the thing that they tell you when you first go to a meeting is connection is the opposite of addiction. And it really just struck me so hard that I'd never actually connected to very many people ever. Just looking at my life, I didn't have any close friends at the time. They were just relationships that I capitalized on. So I've thought a lot about connecting with people and developing relationships. So I love the way that you just described that.
And the other important relationship for me, at least, is a relationship with God. And I feel like that's not in a presumptuous way, but I feel like that's a relationship with myself, with this idea of how to be one. How do I align myself with God and have a life living in God? Whether it's, a lot of people have this Christian belief where you die and then you're reborn, and that they get to be able to repeat that process in different practices that they do. But I just think that's another way for saying, how do you live a life? How do you and God become one? And so that relationship's really important to me. And then the last one's health. I want to be at 9% body fat, have 105 pounds of skeletal muscle mass, and be able to touch my palms to the ground. So my finances, health, and relationships. Those are my 3.
That's awesome. Do you use a DexaBody to scan your muscle mass and skeletal?
I don't know if it's DEXA. I think it's an in-body scan. I don't think it's as precise, but
yeah, I do DexaBody every 6 months.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very important thing to track, because how much you can bench or squat says nothing about how actually healthy you are.
Yeah.
And I've been in there. Like I've had a lot of personal trainers over the years, and I've been down at 5% body fat and was very close to entering some competitions at one point. And my mental health and my actual physical health were at the worst they'd ever been. But, on a picture, I looked awesome. And I thought that's what health was all about. But that was also during my addiction phase of life. So those two things, mental health and addiction, they go hand in hand, for better or for worse.
Yeah, I agree.
I wish we had more time to chat, but since this is a one take live type of podcast, I gotta get on to my next thing. I gotta go coach my daughter's basketball team.
Good for you. Awesome.
Putting the family up there. But anyway, this has been awesome. And Cort, thank you so much for being on my show and being super real and talking about your actual goals and like finite numbers and very specific. It just shows that you've thought about it and you've put the vision and the intention behind what you want to do, and you brought God into that whole equation. So I feel like you're going to get there.
Appreciate that, Adam. Thanks for having me on.
This has been the Vision with Execution show. This is Adam Torkelson. Today, my guest was Cort Brady, founder and CEO of Covalent.